This is the CP Huntington steam locomotive, the only surviving example of its type in North America. For 100 years, it remained a staple on the Southern Pacific Railroad's roster, first helping to build the Transcontinental Railroad and later becoming the company's mascot. Over those years, numerous pieces of memorabilia, books, and amusement park rides have been modeled after the engine. So, how did this unique locomotive go from a simple workhorse to an internationally recognized icon? Let's go find out. During the height of the American Civil War, Congress passed the Pacific Railroad Act on July 1st, 1862, authorizing a transcontinental railroad. In February 1863, the Central Pacific started building their line eastward from San Francisco Bay, while the Union Pacific later built westward at Council Bluffs, Iowa. With the Central Pacific inching further away from the Bay Area, the railroad needed motive power to haul construction crews and equipment. Collis P. Huntington, vice president of the company, traveled to the East Coast to purchase the needed equipment. Of the 6 steam locomotives he acquired, 2 were twin diminutive 424Ts built in 1863 by the New Jersey Danforth Cook and Company.
The railroad, in its first year and a half of existence as Central Pacific Railroad, owned by the Big Four, was taking whatever they could get. So these were probably all stock engines built for the builders to be in reserve. But because of the Civil War, obviously the military was going for the best engines that they could get, and the leftovers were what the Central Pacific could get. When it comes to the first 6 engines, when they finally got their big 10-wheeler Conus, number 6, they essentially got the type of engine that they wanted. But with the 2 little single-drivered engines, they got what they could get.
Since there was no reliable method of shipping engines to the West Coast, workers disassembled and loaded them onto the clipper Mary Robinson. After a 3-month journey from New York and around Cape Horn, the Robinson arrived in San Francisco on March 19, 1864. As the engines were being reassembled in Sacramento, they were given numbers and names. The number 3 was named the CP Huntington, which of course honored Collis Huntington. Number 4 was posthumously named for Theodore Judah, Central Pacific's chief engineer, who plotted this route over the Sierra Mountains.
We know that the Huntington became the Sacramento switch engine very early, as such that we actually know of accidents that befell it and people that it hit on Front Street, on I Street. I mean, it was pretty awful. But they realized that these are perfectly fine engines for working in a yard, and handling that constant shuffling of arriving materials and car kits. I'm sure that's what they were doing most of the time.
Although the Huntington spent most of his time in light-duty service in the Sacramento area, it did on one occasion venture into the Sierras. In circa 1864, photographer Alfred A. Hart, hired by the Central Pacific to document the Transcon's progress, rode behind the locomotive. It pulled a flat car with this portable darkroom wagon and went as far as Cape Horn. The Transcontinental Railroad would later be officially opened on May 10, 1869. In 1871, the Central Pacific became a part of the Southern Pacific Railroad system. The Huntington would be renumbered to number 1 and relegated to suburban passenger service between San Francisco, San Jose, and Hollister. It also saw use on local maintenance-of-way construction trains on the old San Francisco and San Jose Railroad. While on one of these runs in 1872, the Huntington was involved in a serious accident that nearly destroyed it.
While the Huntington was powering a small construction train, another train coming in the opposite direction, supposedly also a construction train, overran the meeting point and they collided inside a cut. The wreck was sufficient enough that the Huntington was all but destroyed. So mechanically, I'm sure the boiler was pretty well mangled. The possibly slightly loosened from the engine chassis, but severe damage, such that it was taken into SP's very small shop at San Francisco and given a new boiler, the one that it currently has, built to the designs of A.J. Stevens, the chief superintendent of motive power and machinery. So the engine today has those dome casings, which are SP standard variants, the rebuilt steep wagon top boiler, sort of aping the original, but not quite, and a number of other modifications. It began to take on the look that it has now from that date onward, with subsequent changes, stack shapes, and so on afterwards.
After undergoing its rebuild, the locomotive went back to hauling suburban trains. It later finished its working career in maintenance of way service and as a weed burner in the 1890s, officially retiring in 1900. However, this wasn't the end for the Huntington. It marked the beginning of its new career as the railroad's mascot. Previously in 1892, the Southern Pacific selected it to be a part of a display showcasing the evolution of their equipment at the California State Fair. It proved very popular with the public, especially the intriguing tiny engine. The railroad took notice of this popularity and exhibited it for the 1894 California Midwinter International Exposition.
Obviously, they had a soft spot for it, even fairly early. The very fact that we have pictures of it in the 1890s, when it was still in suburban train service on that old line, hauling one or two coaches, probably San Francisco Colma locals. And the lettering on the cab is exactly the same style that it currently has. So they came up with that beautiful script lettering along the name panel very, very early, once Huntington had become president of the railroad, up to his death in August 1900. And after that, it was still in the company's possession. So they kind of just sat on it at Sacramento from roughly 1895 until at least 1905. They would periodically trot it out for some special occasion or another, sometimes under steam, sometimes not. Very early on, it was put on a short display track in front of the old Sacramento Arcade Station, which dates between the one on Front Street and the current Amtrak Valley Station that SP built in the 20s. And it came and went from that plinth rather a lot. This whole use of a mascot engine for the company seems to dictate just how they were going to save it.
From 1905 until about 1912, the Huntington remained on that display track outside the arcade depot. In 1913, it was brought inside the SP's Sacramento Shops Erecting Hall to be stored for an important upcoming event.
And so it was up on a pair of I-beams as the vertical elevating elements, well away from the traveling cranes that moved back and forth inside the erecting hall, over against the south wall of the erecting hall, where it was nicely lit up by ambient light. And of course, all the employees in the shops could stand there and look at it, when the boss wasn't around. But for whatever reasons, we absolutely don't know. We've not yet found a record as to why they felt that it needed to be saved. But the key date was 1914. Southern Pacific decided to participate grandly in the Panama Pacific International Exposition at San Francisco. And they took the Huntington down from its little plinth and they gave it a going over like they've never before done, making it as pretty and polished as they possibly could, to the point where they chromed all of the steel mechanical parts, so that they were more polished than they could have otherwise managed. They even chromed the bell. So all to put it on display next to a brand new, earlier model cab forward locomotive inside the exposition hall, dedicated to railroads and transportation. SP also had its own building outside that particular building with a walk-through theater, highlighting exhibits from all over the SP system. I mean, they had a huge presence at the expo, and the Huntington was their mascot symbol for that. uh, and they pushed it as hard as they did, even harder than they did at the 1894 Midwinter Exposition in San Francisco, where they also displayed it.
After the 1915 exposition, the Southern Pacific went all in, with the Huntington becoming their mascot. In 1922, it attended the Days of 49 celebration, an event romanticizing California life in 1849 during the height of the gold rush. The Locomotive participated by pulling short train trips for guests between Sacramento and Brighton. Following this appearance, it also once again attended the State Fair later in 1922.
It next appears in, oddly enough, a film, John Ford's 1924 production of The Iron Horse, in which case it was taken out into Nevada and given the number 4, which is interesting. Why he chose that, I don't know. They didn't change the name on the side of the cab or anything, but it steamed on film for that production. You don't see it very much in the movie, but it's there. And then it goes off to the Louisiana Purchase Exposition in Louisiana. It went back to Louisiana for the opening of the Huey P. Long Bridge and steamed across that. It steamed across the SP's brand new bridge between Martinez and Crockett, the Benicia Cutoff Bridge, when that opened.
In 1939, the Huntington also went to the opening of the Los Angeles Union Passenger Terminal. Walt Disney animator Ward Kimball, a major rail enthusiast, not only captured the engine under steam for the last time on film, but in color as well.
We do have pictures of it on display at various other occasions right through the mid-1950s, but as far as we know, and from the investigation of the boiler that we did in 1998, while I was still with CSRM, it appears that the boiler was shot by the 1950s and that they didn't want to do anything with it.
After being on the SP's roster for over 100 years, in 1964, the railroad donated the locomotive to the state of California. It remained on display outdoors at the old state fairgrounds on Stockton Boulevard in Sacramento for many years, with the railroad's last surviving cab-forward steam locomotive. In 1980, it was moved to the California State Railroad Museum's facility and cosmetically restored back to its 1915 Panama Pacific look. Today, you can view the locomotive on exhibit inside their wonderful museum full of other Southern Pacific steam locomotives. The CP Huntington left a lasting impression on many during its days of touring around the western half of the United States. Its toy-like appearance inspired author Waddy Piper to write the 1930 children's book The Little Engine That Could, beloved by millions. Kansas-based amusement ride manufacturer Chance Rides also modeled their train rides locomotive after the Huntington. With over 400 examples built for theme parks, zoos, and other tourist attractions, it has become the most popular train ride in the industry.
I will quote my late best friend, who was Walter P. Gray III, who was also California State Railroad Museum's first director. Walter and I were teenage buddies together before we even dreamed there would be a railroad museum, let alone working for it. And when we were walking through the museum one day after an event, he said, I think the best way to describe why this engine's preserved is that it's the world's biggest pull toy. And it is cute. It is as cute as it could possibly be. There isn't anybody who doesn't look at it and go, oh, look at that. So, yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Railroad Street for more videos just like this.